Hey, I'm Gareth from Bar Cameras, and today we're checking out the Leica SL. And this is a really interesting camera. We had a couple in our used department, so I went and grabbed one so I could bring you a full review, but also I was just really excited to try this camera out. Now, the reason I say it's a really interesting camera, particularly at the moment, is because of the new partnership between Leica, Panasonic and Sigma. So you're probably aware, but earlier in the year, Panasonic released the new S1 and S1R. We reviewed both of them. I'll pop the links down in the description to the reviews. But along with that, there was a new partnership announced between Leica, Sigma and Panasonic. And essentially they're all using the L mount. So that really expands the ecosystem for things like the S1 and the S1R, but also cameras like the SL, which already uses the L mount. So even though it's been out for a couple of years, the ecosystem has massively increased. And it's just a really interesting camera to talk about now. So in the spirit of that, I've actually been using the Panasonic 50mm f1.4 S Pro lens, which is a really nice lens to shoot with, but I've been using that with the Leica SL just to kind of use a non-native lens with the camera and really test that out. Now, because of that, I've mostly been shooting portraits, which has actually been really fun, but a little bit of landscape as well, so we're gonna talk about all of that. But before we talk about image quality and the specs and things like that, I think it's important just to talk about how nice this camera feels to pick up, because it is instant. The second you pick it up, you can feel it. It feels so nice. And this is the thing with Leica cameras generally. When I reviewed the Q2, I had the exact same experience. It just feels good. But the SL in particular feels just so nice. The ergonomics, the design and the layout of the buttons and things like that are all just outstanding. And the grip is nice and deep, just adding to that great feel. But there's something about Leica cameras that I just can't put my finger on. They just feel special. And the Leica SL very much emphasizes that. So let's just run through some of the spec of the SL. So you've got a 24 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor along with the Leica Maestro 2 image processor. And these combine to give you stunning images. The image quality from this camera really is outstanding. The tones and the colors are just beautiful, and the images have a certain look to them that's just amazing. The image quality I've been able to get out of this camera is just amazing. I'm so impressed with it. But in addition to that, it'll also shoot really well in lower light. So using ISOs up to about 6400 looks absolutely fine. It's absolutely a usable picture, but you can push past that as well and still have pictures that you can use. It can also shoot up to 11 frames a second in continuous mode, which is actually a lot faster than I thought it would be able to shoot, and it has a built-in interval mode for setting up time lapses. Now, similar to that, this camera will actually shoot really nice video as well. I was actually surprised by how good the video is on this camera. I'd imagine most people will be looking at this, probably more of a stills camera, probably more of a photographic camera, but the video is actually surprisingly good. So I'm actually shooting on it now. I'm using the Leica SL in 4K with L-Log, so it'll do 4K at up to 30 frames a second. It'll do full HD 1080p at up to 120 frames a second, but it's also got L-Log built into the camera, and this is the log profile that Leica give you. Now, if you're not familiar with log, it's essentially a really flat profile that you can then play around with in post. It gives you more information in the highlights and the shadows, so you get better dynamic range, and it also gives you better kind of color information, so you can actually color grade more easily in post. Now, I'll link to a full video on how log works down in the description. We've done a full video on that, so it might be worth watching that if you want to know more about that. But essentially, I'll show you what it looks like ungraded, and then I'll show you what it looks like after I've graded it in post. And that makes a big difference. It means I've got full control over the look of the final image, plus that extra dynamic range and things like that. So it's a really nice thing to have actually in the camera. It's also worth noting it was particularly easy to color grade as well compared to some other log profiles I've used in the past. This one was very, very nice to use. So let's talk about the camera itself. As I mentioned at the start of the video, it's very nicely laid out in terms of control, and the camera feels just incredibly nice to hold. It's not super heavy, but it does have a decent amount of weight to it, which gives it a solid feel. And the grip on the front of the camera is nice and deep, just adding to that great feel. The controls are nice and minimal. You've got two dials, one on the top and one on the rear, to control things like aperture and shutter speed. But otherwise, on the top of the camera, you've got a dedicated button for movie recording and a button to switch between stills and video, as well as a nice big screen, which gives a very clear display of your settings, which is nice and easy to look at a glance. Now, on the back of the camera, you've just got the 4 buttons around the rear screen, which allow you to access different menus, and a thumbstick towards the top, which I've got to say is the best feeling thumbstick I've ever used on any camera. I know that's not a particularly interesting thing to get excited about, but this thumbstick really does feel that good. It is the best feeling thumbstick I've ever used on any camera, and it's difficult to explain that without using it, but it's very, very tactile and just easy to get to. It's right there. Thumbstick 10 out of 10. The rear screen is a touchscreen that's nice and bright, but it's the viewfinder which is seriously impressive. It's a 4.4 megapixel iRes electronic viewfinder with a refresh rate of 60 frames a second, and all of that adds up to give you an incredibly clear and smooth imagery. And using the viewfinder is a lovely experience. It really is difficult to explain just how good it looks actually, and it makes for a great shooting experience. The camera is also fully weather sealed and dust sealed as well, protecting you from less than ideal conditions. And you've got dual SD card slots in there as well. The Leica SL is just a beautiful camera, from the design of the actual camera itself right through to the images it produces, and it really did live up to my expectations when I went out and shot with this. Now if you have any questions about the Leica SL, pop them down in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you did like the video, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe and all of that stuff that we always ask you to do. But what is interesting, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the Leica SL, we've actually got a couple in our used department at the moment. So it's worth checking out parkcameras.com to actually see those, because you can get them at really good prices and they are in really good condition as well. So it's worth checking that out. Otherwise, do all the things, subscribe and like and all those things. I'll see you in the next video, and as always, thanks for watching.